China just built Africa a brand new highway. Sounds generous, right? Except Africa didn't ask for it. And the bill, it's not in dollars, it's in sovereignty. China is buying an entire continent and calling it friendship. Ports, railways, mines, power grids, billions of dollars flowing into Africa. The Western media calls it development aid. Follow the money, because when you do, you'll discover something the official narrative desperately wants to hide. This isn't charity. This isn't partnership. This is the oldest play in the colonial handbook, wrapped in a new flag. And by the end of this, you'll see exactly how the trap works, who set it, and why almost nobody is talking about it. It always starts the same way. A developing nation needs infrastructure. Roads, bridges, power plants. The World Bank says no. The IMF attaches impossible conditions. And then, like clockwork, Beijing shows up with a smile and a checkbook. No strings attached, they say. No political conditions. Just sign here. When the deal looks too good, it usually is. Between 2000 and 2023, China loaned over $170 billion to African nations. That's not a typo. $170 billion. And unlike Western aid, which at least pretends to have transparency, Chinese loans come with clauses buried so deep in the contracts that most parliaments never even read them. Collateral clauses that hand over national assets if payments are missed. We're talking ports, mineral rights, land concessions. The loan isn't the product. The loan is the trap, and every single African leader who signed thought they were getting a deal. They were getting a leash. But here's what makes this machinery truly brilliant. It's not just about the money. In 2017, Sri Lanka couldn't repay its Chinese loans for Hambantota port. The solution? Hand the port over to China, a 99-year lease. Sound familiar? That's exactly what the British Empire did to Hong Kong. Colonialism. Now look at Africa. Djibouti, China's first overseas military base, sits right next to the port China financed. Kenya's Mombasa port was reportedly used as collateral for the standard gauge railway loan. Zambia's national power company, ZESCO, nearly fell into Chinese hands over unpaid debt. Ports, roads, mines, control. The pattern is unmistakable. Finance the project. Use Chinese labor to build it. Attach the nation's most strategic assets as collateral. Wait for the inevitable default, and then collect. Not with armies, not with gunboats, with lawyers and contracts. If this pattern is opening your eyes, hit like and subscribe to keep exposing what they hide. Because what comes next connects all the dots. The ports are just the beginning. The real extraction goes much deeper. Here's what they don't teach you in economics class. When a country borrows from the World Bank, the terms are public. Interest rates are known. Repayment schedules are transparent. When a country borrows from China, the contracts contain confidentiality clauses that prevent borrowers from revealing the terms. A 2021 study from Aid Data at William and Mary analyzed over 100 Chinese loan contracts with 24 countries. What they found was staggering. 1. Hidden collateral accounts that China can seize. 2. Clauses allowing China to cancel loans and demand full payment. 3. Borrowers banned from restructuring with other creditors. 4. Terms kept secret, even from the borrowing nation's citizens. These aren't development partnerships. These are financial weapons. Debt is the slavery of the free. And the nations signing these deals often have leaders who benefit personally from the arrangements, while their citizens inherit the debt. The noose tightens slowly. By the time you feel it, it's already too late. And the resources flowing out of these nations tell an even darker story. Congo holds over 70% of the world's cobalt, the mineral your phone battery needs to function. Guess who controls most of Congo's cobalt mines? Chinese companies. In 2008, China struck a deal with Congo. $9 billion in infrastructure in exchange for mining rights. Roads for cobalt, hospitals for copper, except most of the roads were never finished. The hospitals were never staffed, but the mines, they're running 24 hours a day. Cobalt, copper, gold, lithium. Zambia's copper, Guinea's bauxite, Zimbabwe's lithium, Nigeria's oil. Across the continent, the pattern repeats. China finances the infrastructure to extract the resources. The resources pay for the infrastructure, and the profit, it flows east. Africa's wealth leaves Africa, while Africa stays poor. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is documented in trade data that anyone can access. The numbers don't lie. But the extraction isn't limited to what's underground. It extends to something far more valuable. When China builds a road in Africa, who do you think does the building? Local workers getting trained and employed. Think again. Imported. A McKinsey report estimated over 10,000 Chinese-owned firms operating across Africa, with Chinese workers flown in for projects that were supposed to create local jobs. In Angola, Chinese construction crews built entire neighborhoods, then Chinese families moved in. In Ethiopia, the Addis Ababa light rail was built almost entirely by Chinese labor. They promised jobs, but delivered dependence. The economic multiplier that infrastructure is supposed to create: local employment, skill transfer, supply chain development. None of it materializes when you import the entire workforce. Their workers, their materials, their profit. And here's the part that should make you furious. These projects are funded by loans that African citizens will repay for generations. They're paying for infrastructure built by foreign workers using foreign materials that primarily serves foreign interests. The question nobody asks is, who inside Africa is allowing this to happen? Every trap needs someone to open the door from the inside. And across Africa, that door has been opened by leaders who traded their nation's future for personal enrichment. Billions in Chinese loans have vanished into accounts that don't appear on any national budget. In Zambia, former President Edgar Lungu's government signed loan after loan with Chinese entities, while the country's debt-to-GDP ratio skyrocketed. In Kenya, the standard gauge railway cost nearly $4 billion, 3 times what independent estimates suggested it should cost. Where did the difference go? This is the genius of the system. China doesn't need to colonize by force. It just needs to find willing partners within the existing power structure. The tyrant is nothing but a slave turned inside out. A president gets a new palace. A minister gets a Swiss bank account. And the people get a debt they can never repay. Corruption is the door through which empires enter, but the political influence goes even further than bribes. It reshapes entire governments. Here's where the strategy reveals its full scope. Africa has 54 nations. That's 54 votes in the United Nations General Assembly, more than any other continent. And China has been buying those votes one loan at a time. 54 votes. When the UN voted on Xinjiang human rights investigations, most African nations voted with China or abstained. When Taiwan seeks recognition, African nations that once supported it switch sides, mysteriously, right after receiving Chinese investment packages. 1. African nations blocked Xinjiang investigations. 2. Multiple nations dropped Taiwan recognition. 3. Chinese-backed candidates winnow leadership. 4. Belt and Road nations align on key UN votes. The African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa was built entirely by China, a $200 million gift. Then in 2018, it was discovered that the building's servers had been sending data to Shanghai every night for 5 years. 5 years of surveillance disguised as generosity. A gift that spies on you isn't a gift. It's an intelligence operation. And the geopolitical chess game extends beyond the UN. It's reshaping the global order itself. So where is the West in all of this? Where are the defenders of democracy, the champions of human rights? They're watching, and they're doing almost nothing. Complicit. And here's why. Western nations exploited Africa for centuries. They drew borders that made no sense. They extracted resources with zero compensation. They imposed structural adjustment programs that crippled economies. So when China arrives with no lectures about governance, no demands for democratic reform, and cash on the table, who can blame African leaders for choosing Beijing? He who comes with a gift comes with a purpose. The West created the vacuum. China filled it. Old colonial versus new colonial. But make no mistake, the outcome is the same. Resources leave, debt stays, sovereignty erodes. The only thing that changed is the accent of the people running the extraction. The flag is different. The playbook is identical. The colonizer changed, but the colony remained. And this brings us to the most uncomfortable question of all. Economic control is phase 1. Military presence is phase 2. China's naval base in Djibouti sits at the entrance to the Red Sea, one of the most strategic choke points on Earth. Through it passes roughly 30% of global shipping. But Djibouti isn't the end. It's the beginning. China has been negotiating for naval facilities in Equatorial Guinea on the Atlantic coast. It has security partnerships expanding across the Sahel. Chinese private military companies now operate in several African nations. First, they build the port, then they station the ships. Remember, the British Empire didn't start with soldiers either. It started with the East India Company. Traders first, soldiers later. Trade, then troops. The Belt and Road Initiative isn't just about roads. It's about creating a network of strategic dependencies that can be leveraged militarily when the time comes. Every loan is a leash, and every port is a potential base. When you control a nation's infrastructure, you don't need to invade it. You already own it. And this leads us to the question that matters most. So what is China actually building? Not roads, not hospitals, not friendship. An empire. By 2030, Africa will have the youngest population on Earth. Over 40% of all humans under 25 will be African. That's the largest labor force in human history. That's the largest consumer market in human history. And China is positioning itself to control access to both. The minerals under African soil power every smartphone, every electric car, every server farm on the planet. Control Africa's resources, and you control the supply chain of the 21st century. This is not aid, this is acquisition, disguised as development. The loans that can never be repaid, the ports that become bases, the mines that feed Chinese factories, the votes that shield Beijing at the UN. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Every piece fits, every move was calculated, and the colonization of Africa didn't require a single bullet. Step back and look at the full picture. $170 billion in loans, ports seized when payments default, mines running day and night to feed Chinese industry, a military base guarding the world's most critical shipping lane, 54 UN votes quietly aligning with Beijing. Debt, ports, mines, votes, control. This isn't a theory. This is happening right now, documented in contracts, trade data, and satellite imagery. The new colonialism doesn't arrive with warships. It arrives with infrastructure loans and confidentiality clauses. And the tragedy is that Africa, a continent with enough resources to be the richest on Earth, is being systematically stripped of its wealth and sovereignty for a second time. Different century, different colonizer, same result. The question isn't whether this is happening. The question is whether the world will do anything about it before it's too late. If you made it this far, comment debt trap to prove you see the pattern. Every government lies. The question is, what are they lying about?